and welcome to episode 3 of Talking Law from Women in the Law and Business UK. I'm Sally Penny, a barrister at Kenworthy's Chambers in Manchester. I'm also the joint vice chair of the Association of Women Barristers. I am the founder of Women in the Law and Business UK, an organisation which is passionate about supporting the next leaders in law and encouraging career progression through personal development. This month, Head of Chambers of King's Chambers in Manchester, Nigel Poole, QC, tells us about the cases that changed his life and the challenges that face the future of the profession.
I'm actually quite attracted to the idea of a fixed fee for a fixed piece of work, because I think the hourly rate can reward inefficiency. I'm quite quick, so I'll do a set of work and I'll do it in 4 hours. My colleague might take 10 hours.
Yeah.
Why should he be paid for 10 hours for doing a piece of work that takes me 4 hours and I only get paid for 4 hours?
But first, a roundup of what's been happening in the world of Women in the Law UK. Thank you to everybody who joined us and attended the Women in the Law annual dinner. What a fantastic occasion. It felt like a mini conference with 4 great speakers. Lady Hale, President of the Supreme Court, giving a fantastic speech. Dame Laura Cox, retired High Court judge. Helen Pankhurst, great-granddaughter of Emmeline Pankhurst. And Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb. All inspiring. Also in Leeds, we held a great networking event, Meet the Women in the Law Ambassadors and Chair, which was hosted by Waitman's Solicitors. Thank you very much. In Scotland, thank you to all of those who joined us in Edinburgh for our Wellbeing in the Workplace, chaired by Suzanne Tanner, Queen's Counsel. Thank you, and thank you to the Faculty of Advocates who hosted that event in April. Finally, thank you to all of you who joined us in London for our Houses of Parliament tour and question and answers with Mike Kane, MP, and the launch of our research, which you can find out more about online and by emailing us. And finally, thank you to everybody who joined us in Manchester for our Inspiring Women in Sport and Business event, kindly hosted by Ward Hadaway, where our guest speaker was Dame Tanny Gray-Thompson. What a fantastic occasion that was. And some very exciting news this month is the Women in the Law UK Charter, which has been launched to celebrate and mark 100 years since women were allowed to practice law since the passing of the Sex Disqualification Removal Act 1919. We have introduced the Women in the Law UK Charter to ensure the future of women for the next 100 years. To apply for the Charter, firms and organisations have to actively be trying to bridge the gender pay gap in the legal profession, actively promoting well-being and wellness, actively promoting retention of talent in the legal profession, actively be promoting progression of BAME women, actively encouraging male ambassadors and male champions, actively support Women in the Law UK activities through membership, sponsorship, hosting, sponsoring, mentoring, offering work experience, and of course trying to work on this gender pay gap. To apply now, go to our website, womeninthelawuk.com. Now to this month's interview. Nigel Poole is head of King's Chambers in Manchester and is ranked as a leading QC by Chambers UK and the Legal 500. He sits as a recorder and a chair of the Bar, Tribunal and Adjudication Service and has appeared in the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. He also writes a successful blog called Learned Friend. We began by talking about his path to becoming a barrister.
I came to it halfway through my university course. My dad was a solicitor, but he was a sort of solicitor in a small high street firm, and he did wills and conveyancing, and I thought that was deadly boring.
Yes.
And it's not litigation at all, it's not courtroom work. I liked reading Rumpole of the Bailey.
Yes, I agree.
Watching Crown Court on the telly, and but it was through my dad. He had a contact at the bar.
Yes.
And I did a mini pupillage when I was, I think, in my second year of university.
Which is what's now
loved
the
it.
Training period. Yeah.
Well, no, because I did a non-law degree first, so it was during my first degree.
Oh, I see.
And you're coming to the end of that and thinking, what am I going to do? So it was the end of the second year.
Yes.
And there was a career service, and there was a sort of computer program, or what passed for it in those days. And I put in information about the sort of career I might like, self-employed, not tied to a desk, etc.
Yes.
And out popped the answer barrister.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think we need that program now.
And so I did a mini pupillage in Leeds.
Right.
And And I sat in they had a common room in the chambers that I went to in those days in Park Square.
Wow.
And they'd come back and tell tales of their cases at court, criminal cases mostly.
Yes,
and it was
yes.
just brilliant. I just loved it, the whole atmosphere and all the eccentricities of the bar.
Yes, all coming back.
And I just thought, this is what I want to do.
That's amazing. Well, Leeds is a great city, but we're glad you didn't stay there. Apart from your dad, I suppose, who you'd have to say is one of your role models, I wondered if you have any role models and why they're role models that you could share with me.
Well, I was really lucky. My pupil supervisor, Alistair Forrest, and he specialised in medical negligence, which is what we call it clinical negligence these days.
Yes, we do.
I sort of followed him ultimately into that. But
Yes.
he was a real role model for me. So I like to think I was a pupil really for 16 years because I stayed in those chambers for that long, and he was always there to answer questions and give advice. And he was very clever, really good with clients.
Yes.
And I think what I got from him and others that I've admired at the bar was actually a sort of modesty. He wasn't a bombastic barrister at all.
Yes.
Quiet. That doesn't mean he wasn't good at cross-examining someone.
but
He just
I know
did
what
it
you
in
mean.
that penetrating, quiet way.
Yes.
And when I've seen other barristers do that, David Allen QC and so on, that's what I've tried to adopt a little bit myself.
Yes, rather than that sort of, I think Sri Blair was talking about that sort of aggressive style,
Doesn't
which didn't
work.
appeal. Yeah, and it doesn't at all. So Nigel, your work is in human rights, personal injury, clinical negligence, or medical negligence, as you started. Why did you pick that area? We know you followed your pupil master, but I mean, what impact, for example, did the Human Rights Act have on the law in this country, in your view?
The reason I enjoyed or ended up in clinical negligence, to be honest, is it's a way into another world, which I enjoy finding out about. There's times where you think, actually, I could do a laparoscopic cholecystectomy because I've done 6 cases on it. A dangerous belief, I know, but you learn a lot about different areas that I just think are inherently interesting to do with our health and so on.
Yes.
Also, at the risk of sounding a bit sort of epic about it, it is life and death in medical negligence. So you're dealing with cases from birth, through to geriatric care, and so the whole of human life is there. So, and the privilege of representing clients who have been through, some life-changing experiences is great. Human rights hasn't made a huge difference to clinical negligence work, but it has to a certain extent at the peripheries. So with inquest work that often follows from healthcare negligence, and the case that sort of really helped me in my career, called Raybone, had a big
I was
human
coming
rights
to that
aspect.
Actually. A case that's changed your career, I would say.
It was that.
Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah. So it was a tragic case of a woman who was 24 and committed suicide. And I represented her parents.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She'd been having inpatient treatment. She was allowed home when she shouldn't have been.
Yes.
And she took her own life. And under the existing law, and certainly before the Human Rights Act, there was really no recourse for justice for them.
No.
They had no claim because she was over 18. There was a claim for the estate, but it was relatively minor for funeral expenses and so on.
Yes.
And the solicitor who was representing them, who I knew well, Emma Holt, came to me and said, "Isn't there something we can do here? How about the Human Rights Act?" And we looked into it, and it was quite a novel claim. We brought a claim for them under the Human Rights Act to say that their daughter's life had not been protected, and that the state, through the hospital trust, the public authority, owed her a duty, an obligation under the convention, Article 2 of the Convention, to protect her life, and had failed to do so. There's certain hurdles you have to overcome to get to that point. We lost in the High Court. We lost in the Court of Appeal. And we won. I was led at this stage. I wasn't a silk, but I was led by Robert Francis in the Court of Appeal, Jenny Richards QC in the Supreme Court. They were both brilliant, and we won. 5-0
Wow.
in the Supreme Court.
Was that one of the proudest moments in your career?
Certainly professionally, that was, in terms of conducting a case, it was the proudest. I mean, if you win a case, and particularly if it feels as if it's been a fight and it's been against the odds, you always get that sense. I mean, it's one of the reasons we do the job.
Yes.
Is that sense of righting a wrong. That's what brought you into the profession.
Absolutely.
So to actually achieve that, and on such a stage, was a great. It did feel like a great achievement to play part in it.
Can I ask you then about the medical innovation bill?
Yeah.
Is that one of your proudest moments?
Well, it was a curious sort of episode in my career. I'd started a blog.
Yes, it's called Learn a Friend.
That's right. And I'd become aware of Lord Saatchi, Maurice Saatchi.
Yes.
Who lost his wife to cancer, and he seemed to blame the legal profession really for it. He felt that the fear that doctors have of being sued had prevented there being a cure for cancer. He put it no lower than that.
Yes.
And his solution, therefore, was effectively to introduce a law that would render doctors immune from being sued if they gave innovative treatment to their patients, and it failed or harmed or killed them. Mm. And I thought, at first sight, this is entirely wrong. And I thought so when I looked at it again and again.
Yes,
and so I wrote about it.
Yes.
And it snowballed into something of a campaign. I ended up sort of meeting an MP in Parliament and doing public debates about it and letters to the Times and all of this. We lobbied, and a group of disparate people got together.
Yes.
And we campaigned against it, and pretty effectively.
Yes.
Ultimately, for various reasons, it ran into the ground. So the bill was passed, but with all of that part of it removed.
Yes, excellent, excellent, and excellent in the sense of what one person can do, and through your blog as well. I just wanted to just pause for a moment and just think about, you're a barrister, you're a Queen's Counsel, head of your chambers, a father, you've been at the bar for a number of years, but you're doing all this extra stuff, or perhaps new, innovative stuff. Do you think the law gives us an opportunity to write blogs, to campaign and be effective in more than just litigation preparation in the court? What's your view on that?
I was saying to you earlier that we are attracted to the bar, to the legal profession, often because we have a sense of injustice and justice, fair play. And so you do have, and you encounter, through being a lawyer, certain issues that may be directly concerned with the law or indirectly, where you feel that's not just. And we do have a platform to do something about it and to speak out about it. And, like it or not, if you're a QC, people will sometimes listen when they wouldn't otherwise.
I totally agree.
It's not necessarily that you have an obligation to use that, but if you wish to and you do feel that's something you want to speak out about, then you do have a platform.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, can I ask you about some interesting developments coming up? The Ministry of Justice is consulting on extending fixed costs in some civil cases, and I wondered how significant this is and what the results are and hopes are for you. Can you just share a bit about that?
Yeah. Well, you don't want people to not listen anymore to this podcast.
No, stay tuned.
I went into detail about it.
Just very quickly, and I'll move on.
I mean, funnily enough, I'll answer it this way. I've long thought that on the civil side of the bar, we charge at an hourly rate.
Yeah.
I've long thought it's an incredibly inefficient way of charging for the work we do.
Absolutely.
And the reason I say that is slightly self-interest, because I'm quite quick. So I'll do a set of work, and I'll do it in 4 hours.
Crikey, I'm quite slow then.
Yeah. So if my colleague might take 10 hours.
Yeah.
Why should he be paid for 10 hours for doing a piece of work that takes me 4 hours, and I only get paid for 4 hours? So I'm actually quite attracted to the idea of a fixed fee for a fixed piece of work. Because I think the hourly rate can reward inefficiency. But anyway, there's a personal view about it.
Yeah.
That said, of course, the devil is in the detail, and it depends how the rates are set.
Yes.
And they have to be set at a level where people, there are people who are willing to do the work for that rate.
Well,
Otherwise,
yes.
they'll give up and do something else.
Well, that's been a problem in the criminal sphere.
Yes,
we haven't gone long enough for me to start talking about access to justice. But yeah, okay.
Well,
I
but Sally, I think
logic.
that you're a criminal lawyer. I'm a civil lawyer. When I started at bar, we were much closer, the different areas of the profession, than we are now.
Absolutely.
Because it's financial.
Yeah.
The profession has gone in two different directions. And basically, this is a simplification, but civil lawyers are doing all right.
Yeah.
But criminal and family lawyers are not. You particularly at the bar. So you've been really squeezed because you depend entirely on public funding, really, for your
Absolutely.
rates.
Which in turn means that those who are the weakest in society are not getting the best that they could.
Well, very
There's a
arguably.
denial.
Very arguably, crime and family are the most important areas of law.
Absolutely.
But they're the most underfunded so far as the profession is concerned. So it's gone, if anything, in the wrong way. But that is how it's gone.
No, it has, and we must work hard to protect access to justice. Can I ask you some other questions now about diversity? Do you think the law has an issue with diversity?
I think that structurally, the bar doesn't have a problem with diversity in this sense that the structure of the bar and it's a very free competitive market actually at the bar. So if someone had a clinical negligence case and went to a solicitor, that solicitor could choose from one of 200 barristers alongside me for that case.
Yeah.
It's very competitive and there's a lot of free choice there. And structurally, women and ethnic minority barristers and so on can fit easily within that. It's competitive. If they're good enough, they'll be chosen. I firmly believe that as in terms of the structure. The problem that there's been is the age-old we'll select people who are like us.
Yeah.
So when the bar is recruiting, that's been a tendency over the years.
Yeah.
And I've heard things that I won't repeat, and
No,
embarrass
we both
anyone.
has.
Can you believe this person applied to be a barrister because,
Yeah.
and then unacceptable comment.
Yeah.
And it's just a tendency to say, well, we want people like us because we know what it takes to be a good barrister because we've seen it.
Yeah.
And it's people like us. So you tend to sort of go to the same mould.
Yeah.
That is changing, and it will continue to change. But within the structure itself, it allows diversity, that the structure itself can work. The other problem I see in our chambers, we just do civil law.
Yeah.
If you take an area like planning, is there a tendency amongst clients to look for a certain kind of barrister that they're familiar with, someone they can go out for a drink with after the case or whatever?
Yeah.
This is something you just have to be aware of.
Yes.
There's a limit to what you can do at the bar because we are serving clients, but it's something we need to be aware of, and it is a problem.
It is a problem, you're right, but this is an opportunity, particularly for those who are in leading positions, to develop the sort of environments we want to work in, and those who are training and bringing behind us by way of pupils and trainees, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. The fact that you're aware that in certain areas people want certain types of people, but if we make it an effort not to have drinks after work or golf days or football, whatever it is, actually they're rather more inclusive because, the man who doesn't want to drink may not necessarily want to go cycling either. So in terms of the way that we attract, and we have to be careful about the bar because we are self-employed barristers working, so it's much easier for solicitors' firms to deal with some of those issues, I suppose. Can we move on to deal with some of the other questions I've got? Is there one misconception that the public has about barristers?
Well,
or are there too many for you to comment on? Fat cat lawyers, that sort of thing. And the reason I'm asking is, what piece of advice would you give a young lawyer today, for example, who may have heard some of those misconceptions?
Yeah. Well, I think it is open to everyone, and anyone can succeed at the bar. And a diverse range of people do succeed at the bar. But there's still a perception that, if you say fat cats, but, the slightly distant, the lawyer who sort of washes his hands after he's shaken hands with his client, this sort of Dickensian approach. And we don't help ourselves in many ways. I mean, personally, I voted to dispense with wigs for civil cases. I just don't understand why we wear those.
Fancy dress.
I can see an argument in crime to a small extent, but there's that, dining in the inns, etc. It does create Geoffrey Cox QC standing up with his booming voice in Parliament talking about his codpiece and so on. It does rather, it fits this image.
Yes.
That is unfortunate because actually the bar is quite diverse. Yeah. There's all sorts of people on all sorts of levels of income working at the bar. And of course the bar should reflect the people that it serves as well. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a piece of advice you would give a young lawyer today?
Resilience. Well, I don't know if that's advice. It's just trust yourself and trust your own judgment. You spend your life at the bar surrounded by people telling you you're wrong. So certainly in civil case, if I bring a claim and I have a negotiation with, a barrister on the other side, they're there to tell me I've got it wrong. Yeah. And you do need to be resilient. You need to have, I suppose it's a certain amount of self-confidence. You finish that case, you start the next one, and you retain your confidence. You have to. Yeah. So I don't know how you can give advice to be resilient. I mean, you have to learn resilience, and especially when you start off, there'll be lots of confident people around, and you'll think, gosh, they're really good at this, and do I really belong here? I suppose that's another thing. Is I'm I've told you, son of a solicitor, independent grammar school, Oxbridge, white male.
Pale. You're not stale.
All sorts of other
things. You're not stale. No, you're not stale. That's
but
why
I still feel an imposter. So everyone feels that. Yeah. Don't feel that you are unusual, thinking on occasion, I'm out of my depth. Yes. What right have I got to be here? Everyone feels that. Yeah. So you've got to learn resilience to get over that and just carry on. You're there for a reason. Yes. And over time you will gain confidence and more resilience, and then you learn to trust your own judgment, which is after all why you're doing the job, because people are asking you to exercise judgment.
Absolutely. I think you touched on imposter syndrome there, actually, in what you said, which is quite a common theme now. But getting over that imposter syndrome, what's your biggest concern about the future of your specific area of law?
So far as clinical negligence is concerned, the biggest threat really is the occasional perception, which is fostered, I think, from certain politicians in particular, that it's all a bit of a scam, that there's a compensation culture, that patients win cases and payouts, that it's like a lottery win for them. In fact, it is a means of compensating people for terrible things that have happened to them, which were not their fault, but in fact were the fault of either individuals or more often a sort of systemic failing. Yes. And so the threat is just an undercutting of all of that for financial or political reasons or public perception. And I think that can cause great injustice to people. I'm not saying the system's perfect. No. But these claims are justified. Yeah. In terms of the bar generally, I think we have to think about how we organise ourselves in chambers and so on. So when I started out, back in the day, we would be in chambers more, we would talk to each other more, we would learn from each other a lot more. I mean, you say going out for a drink or whatever, but we would. Yeah, sitting around for a coffee, or there was a chance to learn from each other just by sharing experience and talking.
And discuss cases.
Yeah. And that was invaluable. Yeah. And it was an informal kind of training program.
Yes, it was.
But now people tend to work from home more. We don't see each other as much. Yeah. We don't talk about our cases as much in that way. So I think we've got to find ways of replacing what happened naturally. And I do think the Chambers model, I hope, will survive, that people won't just work from home on their by themselves.
Yes.
But we need to think very hard about how chambers works and how
Absolutely.
it can serve barristers well, and
Yes.
ultimately, therefore, serve our clients well. So I think that's a real challenge, is how a modern chambers should operate.
Yes. Well, that brings me nicely to well-being and how the profession needs to adapt. I mean, Women in the Law UK, as you know, we have several events and seminars and masterclasses which are designed partly for that. So, for people who are working those long hours, briefs by electronically, not seeing people, it's an opportunity. But I wonder if I can ask you this. The Northern Circuit, where your chambers and my chambers are, is in Manchester, is the home of the Pankhurst. Do you think Manchester is still a radical city?
Yes, I think it does have a character. I'm a Yorkshireman, actually.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, crikey,
I've been
I
on
wouldn't let you through the door.
the wrong side of the Pennines for
joking.
30 years. And I still get a tear in my eye when I go back to Yorkshire.
Do you?
And see the beautiful stone houses rather than the red brick and so on. Anyway, it is God's own county. But Manchester has a slight sort of, I'm trying to think of a polite expression, sod you.
Yes. Radical.
Attitude, a radical, thank you. Yeah, attitude to it.
Yes.
It's a fantastic city, and it's a great place to work and live. And it does have a slight edge to it, Manchester, which I hope it doesn't lose.
No.
As it develops. But more generally, the North as a whole, I think, has a different culture to London, and one that we really need, particularly in our profession. Well, I say particularly across the board, but it's something we can do about.
Absolutely.
Do something about in our profession. It is to encourage people to realise that the North has a specific and distinct offering.
Absolutely. Well,
but internationally as well as nationally. So
Yes.
my chambers joined the Northern
Powerhouse
Project.
Yeah.
I mean, all we had to do was sign up to that. But I hope at some point we'll really make something of that and work with business partners and professional partners who are also in that.
Yes. Well, can we talk a bit more about that? Because the Northern Powerhouse Partnership is huge. And I wondered if you could just tell us, what is it and why did your set join? Because there aren't any barristers' chambers in the Northern
Well, we
Powerhouse.
decided to join because I think there's sort of three goals that I would have out of it, or at least that we can harness, the resources perhaps of the Northern Powerhouse. I just mean the other partners and so on. Work together with them. I don't mean financially necessarily, but to try and achieve three goals.
Yes.
Well, one is to encourage graduates to come north.
Absolutely.
So you can have a fantastic career at the bar and not be in London.
Yeah, here.
I don't have a London address
Don't you?
professionally. No, I don't
right.
need it. There's good work in the north, and if we all go to London or half go to London, why is that ever going to change? How are we going to encourage more work to come north? But anyway,
Yes, good point.
So we need the best and the brightest to come to the north and join the profession.
Yes.
We need to attract work internationally to the north and the legal profession. That's the second thing. And the third thing, which is probably the most ambitious, and I'm not going to achieve this, I'm sure, but is devolution within the legal sector.
Yeah.
Because all the main institutions, nearly all, in the law are in London.
Yes, they are. Yes,
All the
they
Inns
are.
of Court, Court
Yeah.
of Appeal, Supreme Court, they're all courts of justice. And this creates, I'm afraid, some injustices.
It does.
I looked recently at QC appointments
Yes, so
and was
did I.
troubled by the success rate for London barristers at that time compared
Absolutely.
with barristers outside London.
Yes, and of course for women and minorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But specifically in relation to the North, you see a successful commercial barrister here will go to the local court in Manchester, and we tend not to have High Court judges doing the same value of cases
As in London.
His or her colleague in London, who's in the Royal Courts of Justice in front of High Court judges, fill their QC application form with High Court judge referees. It looks different, but they're doing the same sort of work. Yeah. So these are the sorts of things that do happen because we don't have a properly devolved legal system. Actually, most people live outside London.
Yes.
So they should be served by a bar that is more balanced than it is at the moment. Mm. So, this is another reason to join the Northern Powers, to see whether it's not just about railway lines.
No, which would help.
By the way, well, I don't think it would.
Don't you? Have you tried to go to Leeds?
Yeah, but well, no, that would. So HS3 would. But it seems a strange concept to generate the North to produce a faster train line to go to London.
Oh, I know. I totally agree.
But anyway.
Without a significant reduction in the time. It seems absurd.
Yeah. Anyway. But in the professions, we should also be part of this, generation of the North, or regeneration of the North, because the professions matter as well. It isn't just about infrastructure.
No.
It's about the people and serving the people and the professions and business community as well. Absolutely.
I was thinking, Nigel, that Richard Pankhurst, we are in the home of the Pankhursts, which I know I say all the time, Emmeline Pankhurst and the suffragettes, the city of the suffragists. Richard Pankhurst was a barrister. Mm-hmm. Did he practice from your set? What's now King's Chambers?
I don't. Well,
I seem to remember a judge who's now passed away, Mr. Justice Gilbert, Queen's Counsel, telling me this, that was one of his early homes. I wondered if you...
If Andrew Gilbert told you that, it'll be true.
Well, check my emails, but I used to write to him when he was having his treatment for cancer and he had very little else to do, so he would write these long emails with me.
Great man,
Andrew.
And very sadly, so as you just mentioned, so he died recently after having been head of my chambers and then a High Court judge. We also lost Frances Patterson, who is a great female barrister
and a supporter of women in the law.
And also head of chambers and then a High Court judge.
Yeah.
I was looking it up recently. She was the 92nd QC. Have you seen this list of female QCs?
Yes, I have.
So she was the 92nd in 1998.
Yeah. Can you believe that? 1998 is not that far away. That's not that long ago.
No. The most remarkable, I thought, was Rose Heilbronn's number 2 on the list, although at the same time, I think, as Helena Normanton.
Yeah.
So that was 1949. Her daughter, 38 years later, Hilary Heilbronn, was only the 29th.
Oh, yeah.
You see, isn't that remarkable?
I know. And so we think we're progressing, but let's not forget, it's taken some time, and those who came before us.
Yeah. Well, since your involvement in women in the law, when I joined another set, 18 St John Street, not King's at the time. It was a really big criminal set at the time.
Yes.
And Helen Grinrod was one of the QCs.
Yes.
So she was the 21st on the list of QCs to be appointed. She was a formidable, brilliant silk.
Fantastic. In fact, she's mentioned in an interview by Lady Hale for Counsel magazine.
Yeah.
I think she was a bit before my time, so that's good to know, actually. Yeah. See, the Northern Circuit produces some of the best advocates, aside from the present company. And the history tells a story.
Yeah. And a lot of the sort of, amongst the first female High Court judges as well came from the Northern Circuit.
Well, we are a true powerhouse, and the Northern Power Women and the awards showcase those as well. Nigel, just a couple of final questions, if I may, and if you can indulge me. Your favourite fictional lawyer and a book that has changed you?
Horace Rumpole.
Yes, I wholly agree.
No hesitation. Sorry, you probably hear that.
No, it's one of the reasons I became a barrister.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about when I had my first taste of life at the bar in a mini pupillage in Leeds.
Yes.
And all the eccentric characters and the stories back from the criminal court. And it was just like... It was sort of like Rumpole, really.
Yeah.
It was John Mortimer, obviously a barrister himself, but he just had that whole
down to a T.
Culture and atmosphere down to a T.
Yeah.
Loved that.
Oh, that is...
the book...
Yes?
Dance to the Music of Time by Anthony Poole, which is when I was about 19, 20, I read back to back the 12 novels in that sequence.
Right.
And still sort of dip into it occasionally.
Do you?
One day I'll read them all again.
We might read them for our book club. That's why.
Well,
we
it's a long read because there are 12 of them. But funnily enough, I mean, the narrator is a sort of calm, reasonable, sane person, surrounded by and married to a reasonable, sane woman.
Yes.
But they're surrounded by all these eccentric, slightly insane and colourful characters. And I sometimes think, I like to identify with the narrator a little bit, and I saw Life at the Bar as a bit like that you are surrounded by these sometimes extraordinary individuals.
Yes. I suppose we are. Yeah. And have you got a quote or a motto that you live your life by that you can share? No swearing, please. We've got junior associates and pupils. And
well, you're asking the wrong person, because I sort of hate motivational quotes.
What?
I'm sorry.
What?
I'll tell you one. And
I won't share mine then. Fine.
This will play into the image of the bar being elitist because it's in Latin. My school motto was hoc age, right? What does that mean, Sally?
I don't know. My Latin is very
It's
poor.
effectively like, I suppose it's like the Nike. Is just do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Hoc age. Do it.
Yeah. And
honestly, there was certainly times in my life where I've sort of thought, actually, that was a good thing to learn, because my school was a bit like that. And it's just don't worry about it, don't fret about it, don't over-reflect, don't, just get on with the next thing and do it. So actually, I suppose, having said I don't believe in motivational quotes.
Yes, you do. Good job I asked. Well, I think that's actually quite a good quote for women in the law. Actually, whenever those moments come and we're all hesitant, should we apply for, whether it's still, should we apply for this? Should we do that? Should we, progress? Just do it.
Absolutely. I really believe in that. I don't mind saying most of the things that have happened to me in terms of appointments there have been second time.
Yeah.
And people mustn't be afraid to put themselves forward. People are sometimes afraid because they think they will get rejected. It's not a rejection.
Well,
you learn from it.
Yes.
But it's not it's not rejecting you.
Yeah.
You just didn't meet the criteria that time, or the person who was deciding it didn't think you did.
Yes.
Have another go. Why would you take your bat home?
Yeah.
and not have another go? So put yourself forward. You are good enough. And you're good enough to have a go anyway.
Yes.
But this is where your organisation, Women in the Law and so on, really, really helps, because I think it encourages people to think, well, I've got support.
Absolutely.
And encouragement to do it. And everyone at some point needs that, don't they?
Thank you so much, Nigel Poole QC. Do visit his blog. Just search online for Learn a Friend. I'm Sally Penny. Thank you again for listening to Talking Law. Do let us know what you think and perhaps who you would like to hear on future episodes by leaving us a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you subscribe, you won't miss an episode. The next episode will be with you on the 4th of July. Until then, do check in and see what we're up to at womeninthelawuk.com. Thanks and bye-bye. Talking Law is a What Goes On media production for Women in the Law and Business UK.